just Jim Vaughn.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're now tuned into Chat City with P. Ross. Conversations and interviews are in the queue. Listen or join in. Here she is, P. Ross.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for tuning in again to Chat City with P. Ross. I am your host, P. Ross, and I am excited about having a very special guest in here with us today, Miss Brenda Smith. Welcome to the show, Miss Smith.
Thank you.
And our co-host, Will Quick.
What's happening?
How you doing, Will?
I'm good.
How was let me see, I haven't seen you in 2 weeks?
It's about that much, yeah.
Yeah. What you been up to?
A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Some work around the house and trying to reach out and get my legs underneath me and get used to this whole new retirement dynamic. Like I said, it's a good problem to have, though.
I agree with you. We're gonna house applause that. I can't wait till I get there.
Oh yeah.
Will is newly retired from law enforcement, and I just want to say thank you for all the service that you have provided during those 28 years.
That was indeed
28 years.
Yep.
Wonderful. All right, Brenda Smith is a native of Moore County, and she's here to talk about her beautiful daughter who lost her life tragically back in 2005. It's an unsolved murder case here, and so we're going to touch a little bit about on that. But look, before we get into that, we are in fall weather. We're in fall season. So how have you two been enjoying this fall weather so far? It's been a little cooler, I've noticed. What do you think, Brenda?
I love it.
All right. And how about you, Will? Is this your time of year?
I'm probably more partial to the warmer weather, but it'll come back around, so I'll just be patient. So I enjoy this in the moment. There's some benefits to it.
Yeah. I like sweaters and boots and all those nice things that come along with fall when it comes to fashions and clothes and stuff. And then it's basketball season coming around right after football season. And,
it's homecoming season.
Homecoming season. You're right. And I've got my homecoming event this Friday night, Pinecrest High School down in Southern Pines,
Nice.
North Carolina. We have an after party every year. We've been doing it for the last 6 years, an alumni party. And we opened this event up to the classes of 1970 through 1970 through 2011. And what we do is tell everyone to come with their best school spirit. Whoever shows up with the most alumni in attendance from that class go home with a trophy.
Nice.
Yeah, we just added that part on for the last 3 years. So I'm really excited, looking forward to it this Friday.
Nice.
Yes. All right. As I mentioned before, our very special guest is Miss Brenda Smith. In 2005, at the age of 21, her daughter, Lanilishi, did I pronounce that correctly?
Lanilishi
Smith passed away tragically. She attended a party with friends and was murdered. I'm going to let her mother. First of all, I want to thank you again for being brave and coming out and sharing this story with us. But I'm going to let her mother take it from there. Tell us about that day in 2005 when you got that news.
Well, me and her two siblings, we were in the side of the house. At the time, I had a slide door and a regular front door. Mm-hmm. And the two siblings, which are girls, they were in the living room at the time. I saw these they wasn't uniform officers, I'm sorry. They were detectives, SBI. And I saw them walking towards the front door. I immediately did not open the front door. I motioned them to go down to the slide door, the glass door, so I could speak with them without the sisters hearing it, because I knew that by them coming to my house, something was wrong. And I opened up the door, and they asked could they come in and introduce themselves. And I said yes. Well, like I said, I already knew something tragedy had happened. and they went in to explain that my daughter had passed away that evening, that night, the night before, and that she was murdered.
So what day was this in 2005?
That was on August the 6th.
Okay, so a summer evening, and you said they told you she passed away the day before.
Yes.
So, how often did you guys communicate to where you didn't know that she wasn't no longer with us from the next day?
Well, yeah. Other than the next day, she had came by visiting. I was at work that Wednesday, and at that time I had a job where you would work double shifts, like split shifts. And I went to work that morning, and I came back that evening. That was on a Wednesday when she had came by. It was the last time her sisters saw her because they were there and I wasn't. And that the day of August the 6th was that morning. She passed away on August the 5th.
Okay.
That morning is when I found out that something had happened the next day.
I want to say I'm very, very sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, she was a very beautiful young lady.
Yes.
And I saw photographs of her, very beautiful, like you said, fair to look upon, as we can say. Very
Easy on the eyes.
Easy on the eyes. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful smile. One of the characteristics you mentioned of her outside the show was that she was known as a... Did you call her a baby whisperer?
Yes.
Okay, explain that. Explain that.
Well, it was like all the neighborhood kids from probably 5 and under would always be at my house because she was always taking care of someone's kid. She had I don't know how many godchildren. They loved her. There was a friend of hers that she knew. She had a child that the young lady was going through some problems, and I guess emotional and whatever else she had going on. She had left her child out in the street in a car seat at 6 months.
Wow.
And Lanilishi was like, I couldn't leave that child there, Mom. She said I had to bring the child in because she just drove off and left the child there. So I comes in the house and there's that child in the house, and she was like, Mom, we got to figure out what we're going to do. Where we're going to take this baby, like who's going to take care of it. And fortunately, not unfortunately, one of my girlfriends wound up helping with that child, actually.
So she lived away from home from you and your other children.
Well, yeah, she was back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, tell us, Brenda, what happened when the detectives told you what they about your daughter? I mean, what was your immediate reaction after that?
I just lost it. I mean, even though I knew by seeing them something was wrong, my emotions were all over the place. I just lost it. They had to call other family members over because I at that point I was useless to the other siblings that was at the house. The shocking thing about it was that as a mother, you would think that you would go before your child. And that kind of set in on me real hard at that time. She was only 21.
21, yeah.
And it's sad because I was 21 when I lost my mother. And so that's why a lot of this, with this case with my daughter, is so close to us. It's because a lot of things are so significant to us, for me and her sisters. Our family has suffered a lot of emotional trauma from that because we haven't had any closure.
So what did the detectives tell you as far as in detail as to how she was murdered?
He said that someone forced her inside of a bathtub with her fully dressed and point blank range shot her in the head.
Wow. I'm so sorry.
Did you say she was at a party?
Yes.
With friends, I presume.
Yes, with someone she had grown up with from childhood age all the way up through school.
Is that the same location where a murder took place?
Yes, which was her friend's house. It was his house. She was with him. She considered him her brother at the time. She loved him like a brother from what I saw of them growing up. He was always around. They was always hanging out. But then a stranger within that group appeared that day to come to the party that no one knew about, had never seen other than the brother. I mean, you know, it was her friend's brother that she didn't know about. And I'm not pointing fingers, but he pops up and she's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I think so. I personally don't think that the officers that were involved did enough to figure out or try to figure out what happened to her. As far as who did it, they did a lot of contaminating the scene of the crime. I don't know, they did not care too much about the phone records between the young men when after this incident had happened. The phone records show a lot to me as a not quite police officer, but did go and graduate BLET, so I am a criminal justice major.
Nice.
And at the time, I was just finishing that up when this happened. They were trying to get away with the perfect murder, and they actually did.
It sounds like they shared quite a bit of investigative information with you, so that means they were active as far as sitting down with you and telling you what the progress of the case was?
No.
Okay. You had mentioned about the crime scene being contaminated and the phone records. That's why I kind of
Yes,
figured
that
they
was during the
shared
trial is when I found that out.
Okay, so someone had been charged.
Yes, and let go.
Wow.
There were 3 gentlemen, excuse me, there were 4 gentlemen in the house with her. Three gentlemen, and she was the 4th person. They were the only 4 left inside of the house after the party. I don't know what happened. No one has told me what happened. One young man begged me for weeks to come talk to me that was in that crowd, to talk to me to try to clear his name, I guess. But when I finally accepted him to come and talk to the family about what he thought, what he said had happened, or what he could give me, it was just a bunch of gibberish, really. It wasn't nothing real leading or anything like that. Unfortunately, a year after her death, that young man was found deceased in South Carolina in a hotel room.
Wow. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Chat City with P. Ross on Oak 93.5 FM WRLY Raleigh. We have in the station with us today Miss Brenda Smith, who is sharing her daughter's story. Her daughter was murdered in 2005, and it was left as a cold case. So we're just talking with Miss Smith today. She wanted to bring some light to this case and just share her daughter's story. Miss Smith, were there any females at this party that you know of?
Yes.
Any of your daughter's friends?
Yeah,
that were
yes,
girls? Okay.
yes. There were. There were actually several of her so-called friends there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
One young lady changed her story about her whereabouts in all of this. And like I said, the police didn't go back and say, well, you changed your story. Like, you say you were here, then you say you were there, but then we found out you were actually at the party. They did none of that.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Did you, after this happened to your daughter, did you go to the place where this happened? Did you go to the scene of the crime?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Why?
I couldn't bear that.
I understand.
Well, it was at a private residence, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
So you would have had to have permission from the
owner,
homeowner to
yes.
go in. I presume the gentleman who was hosting the party, your daughter's kind of friend,
Yes.
brother type,
Yeah.
was still living there?
Yes, he was.
Now, did he have parents, or was that his home? Or
He
his
did
parents'
have
home?
parents, but it was his home. I hate to take the story this way, but at some point he had came into all this money, which is why I think he was basically let go and paid his way out of this. He came into a lot of money, bought the home, did what he wanted to do in the home, from whatever to whatever. Parents were living in Southern Pines. He was living in Aberdeen.
How many people were charged in this case?
Only one.
Was it the one that she calls her brother, or
Yes,
his?
the one that owned the house. Yes.
So, but the mysterious guy that popped up was actually his brother.
Yes.
That she had never met before.
That none of us knew about.
But her brother was the one that was charged.
Yes.
Wow.
And also, I went and kind of did my own investigation. And I found out that brother was affiliated with a gang out of Fayetteville. And that his record was kind of, a poor record for a young man.
Mm-hmm.
They did not dig into his background like I did. They didn't dig into Mr. Graham's background like I did. When they let him go on bond, they were supposed to have called me on his bond day hearing. They did not call me. They let him go. As long as he paid the money, they let him go. And then on his background was a hit and run in the Rockingham area. Now, as an officer, I would think that if he was involved in a hit and run in a murder case, you wouldn't get a bond until,
Well, the hit and run was separate from the murder case,
yes,
correct?
Yes.
Well, probably one of the biggest predictors about that is if it's a hit and run, but it's just property damage and no personal injury, no other malice involved, it might have been just a matter of getting a citation for the hit and run because, unfortunately, that happens pretty consistently. People have an accident. They say they didn't realize that they hit something, but evidence suggests that they knew or should have known that they hit something.
Right.
But if it wasn't a hit and run involving personal injury and some other malice, yes, ma'am, then that might have contributed as to why it was not being pursued as a public safety criminal case. It was an isolated incident in regards to that wreck scene.
Right.
Miss Smith, how have your children assisted you with investigating the case like you have?
Well, at first they were asking some of the girlfriends that were at the party about what happened, and all of them were saying that they left before whatever went down there. Mm-hmm. Like I said, they questioned that one young lady, and she said that at one point she was in Raleigh, then at another point she was in Greensboro, but then come to find out she was actually at the party. Now that's what my daughters were investigating, her friends, as far as the females. One of the young ladies that were there, she came to my house, and all she could do was cry. Like, she just cried. Like, if you're not here to tell me anything, if you're not here to give me any information, I mean, why are you just standing here crying? And I was told that she was one of the ones that went to the scene before the police was called.
Wow. I was going to ask you, what did you think about her tears? What do those tears mean to you?
I thought they were not genuine at the time. I thought they were crocodile tears. I thought she was trying to cover up the fact that she was one of the ones that actually went to the scene before the officers were called. And my feelings at the time, I was angry. Like, when you lose somebody or in a tragedy like that, your first instinct is anger. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
just what it is. And I was angry, and I held my peace with a lot of the people that were at the party that I knew about, that have came up and talked to me and spoke with my girls. In other words, I was standing back and I was trying to let God handle it. I was very disappointed in the trial for this case. They didn't seem interested in figuring out what had happened to my daughter at all.
Do you mind if we go back a little bit to the information in the trial? Because it sounds like that was where you could get the most clarity. Obviously, you didn't get closure, but where you could get the most clarity. Was there a weapon, a murder weapon recovered and introduced as evidence?
No, but there was what the FBI called a gun that they say they found side the road to try to say that this is the gun that did it to her, but it wasn't. And what I mean by them contaminating the case and doing whatever they could to do whatever, it just wasn't. It wasn't the kind of case that we would see in a normal murder case. You know what I mean? It didn't happen that way. It only took them 3 days to acquit the guy in the jury. They let the jury come out during lunch and eat with the public while they talk about the case. And they wasn't, as I knew it, supposed to do that. The jury's supposed to be sequestered someone else during lunch. Well, they were out in the public eating, where we were all eating, the people in the courtroom, everybody that was in the courtroom. They were there listening at everybody mumbling and talking about how they feel and their opinion. So to me, that kind of let the jury, in my opinion, that kind of swayed the jury the way that they went with the case, because they were listening at other people talking about stuff that they really didn't know anything about themselves.
Brenda, did you approach that county, the court system, about what you witnessed with those jurors?
Yes, I did. And they wanted me to write a letter to, I think it was a commissioner, I think it was at the time. Mm-hmm. I wrote the letter, and then they wrote me back and said that I had to talk to someone else. By the time I was able to contact Moore County Sheriff's Department about the case, I was informed that all the evidence in the case was destroyed.
Wow. Is that common?
No, it's
not. For them to destroy evidence?
From the end of the trial to the time the evidence was destroyed, or when they told you it was destroyed, how long was that time?
Probably less than 3 to 4 months.
Less than 3 to 4 months. That is highly unusual. Obviously, we don't know all the evidence that they presented, because it sounds like without a murder weapon, the most of what they had was based upon testimony. That doesn't sound like there was an awful lot of credible testimony, right, one way or the other.
Right.
So sounds like the only evidence that they might have even had may have been her clothing.
Yes.
If she was in the tub, then if it was an older house, I would imagine that tub might actually have been a cast iron tub. We don't know if the bullet that was fired, if it remained in her body or if it was lodged somewhere else, if it was recovered. And that's why I was asking her more about the proceedings in the court case, because that's where the details are, as far as what you would know.
Right. Because I personally called, like I said, the Moore County Sheriff's Department to see what could I do to get the case opened back up. Mm-hmm. And that's when I was told 3 months or 4 months later that all the evidence that they had for that case was destroyed, and it was destroyed by order of a judge from the Moore County office.
Does that mean they cannot open the case back up since the evidence was destroyed?
Well, in order to open the case back up, they would have to have other information that would lead them to a different suspect, because the individual that was criminally charged and he's acquitted is what's called jeopardy has attached.
Right.
So even if they came up with new evidence to charge him, he has been acquitted for that original offense, so they can't go back and recharge him.
Right.
Wow.
That would be considered double jeopardy, right?
Correct. But like you were saying, the person that it sounds like really feels like is responsible wasn't him to begin with. You think it was the other gentleman.
Right.
The problem is, I guess, trying to find a credible witness that would give them evidence that it would be the other gentleman. And if that young man is gang affiliated, as you spoke of, there's a lot of risk involved with people coming forward.
Exactly.
Probably one of the greatest hindrances for law enforcement to solve these type of cases where some or a number of the people involved have checkered backgrounds, for lack of better terms,
Right.
is their willingness to cooperate with factual information.
Right.
That whole street terminology, snitches get stitches,
Right.
is legit.
Right. But I and that is true. But we're trying to now with our youth in the county that we're from, which is Moore County.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get our youths to, first of all, stop the violence. We're against the guns.
Yeah.
We're against the guns. I'm actually in an organization called Moms. It's Moms Against Murdered Sons.
Mm-hmm.
We work with the NAACP. We're trying to get the kids to not feel like something is going to happen to them. If they see something, say something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're trying to get that out to them now. I don't know how much it's going to help because, like you said, people, they say, you know, the street name, snitches get stitches.
Right.
And I can understand that. But when there's a young lady or a young man involved at that age, I honestly feel like someone should have came forward. Someone should come forward and say something. I mean, we've been living with this for 18 years, and trust me, y'all, it's not an easy road.
No.
It's not an easy
No.
road to deal with losing a child and don't know who did it. I mean, these people could be in my daughter's face every day, my face every day.
Right.
But then at the same time, all I can think about is you could be the one that pulled the trigger that killed my child, and you're in my face talking with me, laughing with me, making me feel like everything is okay. But in all reality, and with me, everything is not okay.
But that's all the more reason why your efforts now are so admirable, because very few people can sympathize with the hurt that you're dealing with, but the fact that you're channeling that into an effort to try to help make sure that no one else has to go through this, especially with
Right.
Your daughter wasn't a child as far as being under the age,
yes.
but she was your baby. She
Right.
was your child. She will always be your child. So
Right.
under the circumstances, that's never right.
Right.
Right. And I want to applaud you, Brenda, for the efforts you have made with children to try to steer them in the right direction.
Thank you.
You know, coming from your daughter's death and your loss.
Thank you.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Chat City with P. Ross. I am your host, P. Ross. I have co-host Will Quick here with me today, and our special guest is Brenda Smith. Brenda Smith is one who lost her daughter in 2005 to a murder. She was at a party, and her case has gone cold. She was at a party, she was murdered, and her case has gone cold. Brenda, I want to ask you this. I know you said your daughter was a great person, a great woman, young woman, special to a lot of young people younger than her.
Yep.
Do you think that your daughter had any enemies that you were not aware of, or that she may have been involved in something, maybe just one time or a couple of times, that may have
Well,
got her in this situation?
I wouldn't say she had enemies, honestly, not like that. I would say that, you know, growing up, she was only 21, so growing up, of course, in school, you may have fought here and there or something, argued with
Right.
someone or something.
Yes.
But as far as the age that she was at that time, to be honest with you, everybody, they loved her. I mean,
Yeah.
her character was so outgoing and amazing that she could touch anybody just talking to him about whatever. She could talk to him about whatever. I've had people, and she's been through some, let's back this up. My daughter had been through some things growing up. She spent time behind bars, if you want to put it that way, in a home. Even the ladies there came to me and they were like, you know, your daughter was the most generous person I've ever known. I don't know who could have done something to her like that. I mean, because, you know, some kids go through this adolescent type thing and they go through they do things that they realize is not right at the time. I put it that way.
Absolutely. Yes.
But she was there. Lanilishi was there for her friends. Her friends that was in abusive relationships, toxic relationships, shall I say. She was there for them. She would basically rescue the females. She would come between the situation. She would calm the situation, or she would just have the situation stop altogether. I think a lot of people know her as someone that was sweethearted, gentle, but she didn't take a lot of mess from anyone. I would say that.
Now, it's interesting that you would make that point about how she was kind of like an unofficial advocate and
Right.
recognized when other young ladies. P. Ross was asking if she had any perceived enemies or whatnot. I think we all know that domestic violence cases have all kinds of far-reaching impact. And when you take someone who is trying to help someone escape from a dangerous or domestic situation, they could find themselves very much in the proverbial crosshairs of the offender.
Right.
I'd be curious to know what was presented by the district attorney in the case as to the motive behind the shooting.
There wasn't, they didn't, that, like I said, they didn't do much of anything. To be honest with you, the district attorney, he whispered in the courtroom during this trial. Like, you could barely hear him. Like, the judge never said, "Speak up, sir," or we had to lean forward to hear him. But in between her case, they bring out a drug case. Now you can hear him echoing all over the courtroom all of a sudden. Like, his voice got loud. He got masculine all of a sudden. You get that reaction over a drug case, but you don't have that reaction over a child being murdered. I thought something was wrong with that in the beginning.
What do you think that was about?
To me, I thought it was a prejudice towards me and my family. As a young lady had came up to me, a Caucasian young lady, we did a program one day. Like I said, we're in this group and we speak in different places and do different things. So after I spoke of my daughter and her situation, what happened to her, when the program was over, this young lady, Caucasian lady, walked up to me and she said, "So they didn't care about your daughter because you're poor, huh?"
Whoa.
Yes, she said that to me.
Wow.
And I just smiled at her and I said, "Well, you know what? I guess you're right."
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's I can't imagine what it would be like to hear that come out. But as I said before, the greatest challenge in an investigation of that nature, from what limited amount of information I've gotten from you, is a lack of physical evidence to be able to tie people
Right.
together. So your most prominent evidence is typically going to be testimony. And then they are matching what one person says to what another person says, looking for consistencies.
Right.
It doesn't sound like that happened. So you didn't have any evidence. You didn't have any consistent statements. And as I asked you, they didn't seem, or doesn't, that you can recall, even mention what the motive was.
No, no. I mean, if they couldn't charge anybody, they couldn't give a motive to me.
Well, I mean, they charged somebody.
I
'cause it
mean,
was
yeah,
on trial.
at the time, yeah, but they only did that because it was his house. The house was in his name. That's the only thing I got. The reason why he was the one that was arrested, because he claims that he was passed out in his car, mind you, outside of the house. The other gentleman, the one that I told you about that was found deceased in South Carolina, he left the scene, went to, from what I understand, his aunt's house. I don't even know if the aunt was even questioned. But one of her nieces did tell me that he did talk to her and that he stated that it wasn't him that did it. But I feel like if he went that far to tell her something, she probably knows a little more than what she would let on as well.
Once again, trying to get what someone knows and getting them to reveal that
Right.
is very, very difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so for instance, the brother that I was speaking of, he testified that he ran through the woods because it scared him. He was in shock, and he ran through the woods and went to the store from the path from the house to the store. I actually don't even think that area was searched or checked.
So who, I guess, the collection of people that were there at the home at the time this happened, were they the ones that described to the police what happened?
No,
moment by
everyone,
moment, or what?
No,
Okay.
they all claimed they don't know. They didn't know what happened. The three males that were there with her, they all claimed they didn't know what happened.
And that was the brother friend that was out in the car, passed out. His brother who mysteriously showed up, and then this other young man who didn't say anything other than to tell you that it wasn't him.
Right. And actually, I was right the first time. There were 4 gentlemen. There were 4 people there.
So there's a fourth
There's
gentleman.
a 4th gentleman, yes.
Okay.
And so somebody had came up to me in the streets. I'm just going to say, and it just said, well, it's taken care of. And I'm like, what's taken care of? And just walked off. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you come from, but what are you talking about? He never elaborated.
When they came up to you in the streets about that and said it's taken care of, was that before or after this other young man was found dead in
After he was found in South Carolina deceased.
So it sounds like that they, based upon what they told you, enacted some street justice.
If that was the case, or did they do something to keep him from speaking, from telling the truth? Which he is the one that was deceased is the one that actually came to me, called me every day for 2 weeks to come talk to me. When he finally came talk to me, there was a gentleman with him that was on the outside. And like I said, everybody's upset right now. So my whole entire family is on the outside. I'm like, this family, the yard is filled with my family. And I wanted them there because I didn't know what was going to happen with this. Just finally saying, okay, you can come and tell me what you got to say. So they did describe another gentleman that was in a truck, and that they don't know who he was. They don't know. They never seen him before. He wasn't one of the guys that was in the house. And they was like, he was just like fidgeting around outside in the truck and moving around. And the guy inside talking to me, he was fidgeting around, popping off big sweat balls, rocking back and forth. So right there, as a police officer, I knew something in that story wasn't right.
So that was a planned meetup with that gentleman, correct?
Yes.
Did you notify the authorities that he was coming to
Yes.
your house?
Yes.
Did they show up?
No. No. When I tell you the authorities did nothing, they did nothing. Absolutely nothing. And like I was telling you again, also, like I graduated from BLET. I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to serve. I wanted to help my community. But when that happened to my child, it's like, how can I go work for you guys when you're not even helping me?
And I can understand that point. I mean, that can take you one or two ways. Either you say, that's not an organization I want to be a part of, or you say, you know what, I want to be a part of the organization to do it the way it's supposed to be done. But no one could ever fault you for feeling the way that you do.
Well, that was my feelings at the time, so I didn't pursue that at all. Even though
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely. Even though I still, stayed in touch with a few people and kept, trying to keep stuff rolling or whatever. But there was nothing. I mean, they also said that the officers did say that there was a lot of rounds of shells found in the yard. They found a lot of weapons in the house, but none of the weapons were the ones that shot my daughter, so they say.
So were those spent shell casings like just what had been there over time, or are they saying that there were multiple shots fired at that party?
There were multiple gun fired that night. I'm not sure if it was at the party, after the party, but those gun shell casings were fresh.
And it was proven that she was shot inside the home.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it was so bad in court that I just couldn't believe the lack of the DA, the interest that he had in this case. It blew my mind, really. When they started actually showing the pictures and the evidence, I couldn't stay in. I walked out, and I literally just couldn't. I to this day I haven't seen any of the pictures or any of the
Is it
evidence.
possible that she might have been hit by a stray with all that gunfire?
No, she was on the inside of the house in the bathtub.
That's where they found her.
Yes.
And that when you said that you hadn't seen any of the pictures,
Right.
don't know if that's where she ended up, if she had been struck, and then that's where she
Might have been placed, you mean?
well placed, or if she was still able to move and that was where she retreated to. But when you mentioned about all the gunfire that went off there, and that you hadn't seen any pictures, because when you're doing crime scene and looking at trajectory of the round that hit someone and whatnot, looking at the path of the crime scene, determining if there was a blood trail from somewhere.
Okay, no, that there wasn't. My other daughters were in there in the courtroom, and all the blood was around the tub. There was none leading out of the bathroom. There was no blood trail leading out of the bathroom. There was no blood trail, like, physically around, like, in other areas of the bathroom.
Right.
It was just right there at the tub where they found her, just right there.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Chat City with P. Ross on Oak 93.5 FM WRLY Raleigh. We have with us today Brenda Smith, whose daughter was murdered and her case left as a cold case. Also with us today is co-host Will Quick, who is a former law enforcement agent. We're discussing the case of Lanilishi Smith. Will, homicide cases such as this that we title as cold cases. What happened? I mean, how long do these cases go before they're just determined as cold cases? I mean, are they? I mean, I know they're open back up, but at what point do you decide that it gets open back up?
Well, in this circumstance, the fact that they charged someone and that person was acquitted, so that person, for all intents and purposes, are off the table regarding this case. But as long as you still have, obviously you have a homicide, being a cold case means it's effectively inactive. Inactive meaning you don't have any leads to follow up on. I remember recently the Orange County Sheriff's Office had an extremely old, even before that predates your daughter's death. I want to say it was a child that they found off in the woods not far from the roadway, and they got a break in the case and charged someone, I guess, within the last several years. And the case was probably 20, maybe 30 years old, just about. So, but I want to say what happened in that case was they had some sort of DNA, because the ability to be able to utilize DNA as an investigative tool is a lot different now than it was 20, 30 years ago.
Yes.
And I think that they had something from the case. So the fact that you're saying that all the evidence has been disposed of or destroyed, that's surprising to me.
It's surprising.
It's surprising. Now, the fact that that's what they told you versus whether or not that's actually the case,
Right.
we don't know, because we don't have access to that.
Right.
But at the same time, if the evidence that was presented was not DNA related,
I have DNA evidence in her case. I have evidence that's been locked up in a bag for 18 years. That the SBI handed me something that did not belong to her but was on her body.
that's peculiar. Why would they give you something that did not belong to her and give it to you?
It had blood splatter on it. It had DNA on it. I'm pretty sure it had more than one DNA on it.
But that is so out of the ordinary, because even if it didn't have anything on it, if it was something that they brought you and you said that's not hers, why would they give it to you?
Because they said they found it on her body.
Would
That
her
is so
DNA be
unusual.
on it?
Her DNA is in fact on it. Her blood is on it.
Well, there's blood on it.
Yes.
But okay.
We're presuming because she was the victim that would be her blood. Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. That is highly unusual.
Wow.
It has not been open in 18 years, so everything in it is still preserved. I think they gave it to me because they knew they was going to lose the case because of the lack of evidence. And they knew that I had been, like I said, to the police academy and all that. So they knew I knew not to get rid of that particular item. They knew that I would hold on to that, and I did.
But unfortunately, that piece of evidence still couldn't be utilized at this point in time because since it's not in the regular evidentiary custody chain,
Right.
it would easily be put out, even if there was some DNA that could be analyzed to give you a better perspective of a possible suspect. Because it did not stay in the chain of the criminal justice system and the law enforcement, it's useless.
Really?
Wow.
Yes,
I did not know that.
it's useless because how can they authenticate that this DNA has not been tampered with because it hasn't been in law enforcement custody?
Because, well, they can tell it hasn't been tampered with as far as myself and my siblings. It's because the bag has never been opened, and whatever was on it when it was gave to me, that's what's on it
It
now.
wouldn't matter because it goes so far outside of the normal scope of proper protocol for evidence handling.
Mm-hmm.
Any defense attorney, there's no way in the world that would ever get introduced.
Well, it's kind of strange that you would say that because, like I said, I do a lot of investigating myself, and I've reading across cases where something has been found from a case that was, I think, maybe 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Some evidence was found in that area of the scene of the crime later on,
Mm-hmm.
7 years later, and a person was convicted from the evidence being found.
But forgive me for making this observation.
Oh, I
There's
just
a
want you to
difference-
clear my mind.
There's a difference between evidence being found new
Right.
and evidence being in the possession of law enforcement and given back. That's
Right.
two different things.
Okay, so
if
that's
it's
the
evidence.
difference.
If it's evidence that had never been discovered otherwise,
Okay.
then that's different. But when you're talking about something that, as you described it, was an item found on your daughter's person that you told them did not belong to her,
Mm-hmm.
in what environment do we give stuff to someone that it did never belong to them? That's the unusual part.
That's what I told her. She reached me the bag. It had a couple of things that belonged jewelry-wise to my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
It also had another item in it. When I looked at it, I said, "What is this? This is not my daughter's." She said, "Oh, this is not hers?" I say, "No." She said, "Well, we found this on her body."
Yeah, right away that goes back or should have gone back with law enforcement.
And that's what I mean by not doing their job.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you, like you said, why would you give me that when I'm telling you it's not hers?
Yeah.
And true, for them to close the case. I mean,
Well, it's not closed. It will probably
mean-
be considered inactive.
inactive. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. All right. Yeah, something like, or destroying that evidence.
Which
that
we
they
don't.
used.
That may have been what she was told. Someone may have misspoke.
Misspoke.
But I mean, at this point in time, given that the case is now approaching 20 years old,
Yes.
and you've had someone that was tried and acquitted
Yes.
without the benefit of new evidence and even anything that could still be evaluated with today's more advanced technology, it's going to be real hard to have unless someone comes forward and then there's someone else that can corroborate that. The problem with that is you've only got the 4 individuals who were in the house, one of which is now deceased. The other, as you mentioned, is was gang affiliated at the time, and then the young man that she considered her brother, being brothers with the gang affiliated young man. Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns that
Yeah,
are going to be
definitely.
very difficult to uncover
Definitely.
at this point.
I would say so.
Brenda, have you played out in your mind what you think actually happened that night? From the last time that you saw your daughter or spoke with her up until the time you heard of her death, what do you think happened?
I have no idea. I've never tried to put it together. I've never tried to insinuate. All I know is that I just wanted justice for my child. I don't care how, who, what. I just wanted justice for my child. I never said or thought in any kind of fashion, that it was even the young man that they had arrested or the young man that was there that I didn't know about or the other two young men. Mind you, all of these guys used to come and visit her at my house, except the brother. Like I said, I didn't know about him. All of these guys used to sit down at my table and break bread, as we would say.
Have you had any contact with them over the years? Or
No.
seen any of them? I know the ones deceased, but
No.
hadn't run across any of them?
No.
Okay. Are they still in the same area as you?
No.
Okay. All right.
What about the house that everything occurred? Does that young man still own that house?
I'm not sure, but the last person that I've known to have stayed in the house, don't think this is weird because this is really what happened. I happened to be shopping one day at a store, and this young lady that actually lived in the house after that had happened, she was the cashier in the store that day, and she looked at me and she said, "Oh my gosh," she said, "are you such and such?" And I said, "Yes." And she says, "Oh my God," she said, "your daughter is still in that house." I said, "What do you mean by that?" She says, "Well, she always go from the bathroom to the kitchen. My mother has seen her, my daughter has seen her, and I have seen her." She said, "I was wondering, like maybe one August the 5th night, you feel like it or you up to it, that you could come and spend the night so you can actually see her just actually walking through the house."
Wow. Wow. So her spirit is lingering in the
And I
home.
think it's there because of the case not being solved. She's restless. If she could come and tell me what happened, I'm pretty sure she would. But I think she's restless. And this young lady, like I said, she didn't know me. And she welcomed me into the house. I never went, actually. But I thought about it. You know, I thought about that. And before I even told her that, yeah, that could be her, because that's what she did at my house. She would go in the kitchen, rattle dishes around, drinking coffee, go back to the bathroom, from the bathroom to the kitchen to her room. And that's what she just used to do all the time.
Wow. Interesting. Have you talked to anybody spiritual about the experience that the lady's experiencing in that home?
No, but since this other case have happened, I'm in that leaning a little bit towards that.
And you said other case. What are you referring to?
With my friend, Miss Watts.
The Alicia Watts
Yes.
case. Okay. Yes. Oh man, time is quickly running out on us here. We wanted to get into toxic friends as well. Thank you, Brenda, for sharing your story. And I got a couple of more questions to ask you before we end. Toxic friends. Man, I'm 54 years old, and I'm learning that people still have, in our age group and older, still have encounters with toxic friends.
Yeah.
And when we talk about toxic friends, we are talking of characteristics like gossip. I mean, gossip is, I guess, always going to be around gossiping. Those who put you down, your toxic friends that are your friends that put you down.
Right.
Apologies that aren't sincere. You're involved in friendships that make you feel nervous.
Right.
I mean, that's part of a toxic friendship.
Friends that influence and encourage you to do things that you probably know you shouldn't be
not
doing.
do. Right. Yeah. And just always putting themselves first, never listening or listening to what you have to say.
Right.
They're always dominating the conversations and things
Yes.
of that nature. Toxic friends.
We all have them.
How do we deal with that? What are some remedies for that? And I know you mentioned to me earlier, Brenda, before we started the show, that your daughter was dealing with toxic friends, or all of this happened because of toxic friends.
Well, she thought that these people was her friend, but the stuff that they were into, the things that they done, I would always tell her they couldn't be your real friends. I mean, you know, because they're pulling you the wrong way, basically. I have ran into toxic friends. Me, I just listen. I listen to them. You know, that's what they want. So I just give them what they want. If they want to ramp and take over the conversation or talk, whatever, I just listen. I don't judge or But I do have it. I have encountered some of those lately, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I just listen, and once they done doing whatever, talking and making it difficult for me a little bit, I just, okay, then I'll see you later.
Well, how do you handle toxic friends if you have any?
There's a key word. If
If you have any.
I guess one of the best ways I can say is I have a very strong personality.
Mm-hmm.
And in having a strong personality, I also feel like I have a very giving heart.
Mm-hmm.
I have an interesting perspective about meeting people in that most people require time to develop trust of them versus me. If I've just met you, there's nothing that has transpired that would cause me not to trust you.
Right.
So at that point in time, you're given all your chips per se as far as our relationship, and it's up to you whether or not you're going to value it or you're going to exploit.
Right.
And if you start to exploit, I'm probably going to be pretty up on game, and you can get dismissed.
Here are some things that you may go through if you choose to keep a toxic friend around. Those who try to maintain a toxic friendship will engage in self-gaslighting behaviors. This was my research today when I was looking this up.
Mm-hmm.
You will experience denial and intellectualizing things by making excuses for them. Your friend's bad behavior. So just think again, or think about maybe handling those toxic friends with a long handle spoon.
Yeah, that's what we say down south with the long.
I think the biggest thing behind that is to make sure that if they're going to be toxic, don't let it poison your life.
Right. Exactly. That's kind of like
I mean, I can make choices to do certain things, to go to certain environments where I know or reasonably should know, this probably ain't my scene. This is probably not the environment. I mean, we talked about homecoming season. There will probably be homecoming parties that may be as much for the age difference as much as just what I know about that sort of party. I would probably pass on that because historically speaking, there's been things that take place that I'm just not interested in anymore.
Yeah.
And you do get that way. When you get a certain age, you feel like that about, a socializing, shall I put it?
Sure.
Okay. Our time is at its end. But before we go, thank you for listening to Chat City with P. Ross. We'll be back next week. Each Thursday, we're here at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Brenda Smith, what is it that you want the world to know about your situation now, with your daughter being deceased and her case being left like it was?
I just basically want to say that if anybody has the heart and the guts and the mind frame set that knows what happened to her, as I've been saying for years on my Facebook page, my videos, and all over the place, speaking everywhere, please come forward, because this family is suffering behind all of this, and we're really suffering from it. I don't know, my kids they make me feel like sometimes they make me feel like it's my fault that she's not here, and I know it's not, but that's just the way they make me feel sometimes. I just want closure, and they want closure. If anyone knows anything, just go to the local authorities and give that information up. That's all I ask.
And
Brenda?
the agency that investigated the case, did you say it was the Moore County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, well, it originally happened in Aberdeen, so it starts out with Aberdeen Police Department, and then it winds up into the county.
Okay, and that is Aberdeen, North Carolina. That is the close of our show. Brenda, thank you for being so courageous and coming to the show today.
Yes.
Everybody, enjoy the rest of the week and be safe.
Community Radio, WRLYLP, Raleigh.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Sally Patterson.